Have you ever had one of those moments where the universe just seems to, well, to glitch?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about. You're just, I don't know, sitting there, maybe doing the dishes, and suddenly a friend you haven't spoken to in 6 months just pops into your head.
For absolutely no reason.
No reason at all. You dry your hands, you pick up your phone,
And well,
boom.
a text from them comes through right at that exact second.
Exactly. It's that feeling. Or, what about a dream? You dream about something really specific, like breaking a blue ceramic mug.
Okay.
You wake up, you shake it off, it's just a dream. But then 2 days later, you're at a coffee shop, someone bumps a table, and
A blue mug, the exact one from your dream, shatters on the floor.
right. And that's usually the moment where we stop, we freeze.
And then we immediately have a script for it.
We do. We say, wow, what a crazy coincidence. Or we make a joke, glitch in the matrix. We laugh it off because it just doesn't fit the rule book.
But our deep dive today is kind of asking, what if it's not a glitch?
Exactly. What if that so-called coincidence is actually the most honest glimpse you've ever had into how the universe really functions?
That is a thrilling and, honestly, a kind of terrifying thought.
It is. And to explore it, we're doing a deep dive into the work of a really unique thinker, Segay Bakırdöven. He's a Turkish author, best known for books like Algı ve Oluş, which is roughly perception and becoming, and another one called System.
And I think it's important to give some context here. Bakırdöven isn't, some mystic speaking in riddles from a mountaintop. His background is actually in economics.
Which feels like such a strange pivot, doesn't it? From,
Yeah.
supply and demand to metaphysics.
It seems that way, but I think it gives his work this really specific flavor. He's got this rigorous logical training. He gets systems, but he takes that analytical mind and just points it at the deep end of philosophy.
He blends the math with the mystic.
That's a great way to put it. And his whole mission, and ours for this deep dive, is to challenge this rigid view of linear time we all live by.
You mean, yesterday's gone, today's here, tomorrow's not written yet, that whole timeline.
Right. He argues that synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences, is actually proof that our psyche, our mind, operates completely outside the laws of physics.
And he goes a step further. He says science has become something of a dogmatic religion.
Yeah, that it's a great tool, obviously, but when it comes to consciousness, it's blinding us to how our minds actually work.
Okay, so we have a huge roadmap today. We're going to dig into why linear time might just be a trick your ego is playing on you.
We're also going to connect quantum physics to your dreams.
And you have to stick around for this one because it sounds wild. There's a specific mental experiment he proposes involving a table and some music that he claims lets you touch the unknowable.
It's a heavy lineup. It really forces you to question the ground you're standing on.
So let's start with that foundation, the trap of linear time.
Right.
Bakırdöven doesn't start with modern psychology. He goes way, way back.
All the way back to the ancient Greeks, specifically a philosopher named Parmenides.
Right, Parmenides. So this is really the bedrock of the whole argument then.
It is. Parmenides basically argued that the universe is this one infinite static block. It doesn't move. It doesn't change. It just is.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, sounds completely insane to anyone living a normal life.
Yeah.
I walked here today. The clock is ticking. Things are definitely moving.
Of course. And Bakırdöven explains this using a classic analogy. It's a version of Zeno's paradox about walking home from the market.
Okay, walk me through this, because walking home feels pretty straightforward.
Well, imagine you're at the market and you want to walk home. Logic says to get there, you first have to walk half the distance.
Makes sense. I walk halfway.
Okay, but now you have a new distance left to cover. So to get to your door, you have to walk half of that remaining distance.
Right, so now I'm 3/4 of the way there.
Exactly. But now you have a new remaining distance, and to cross that, you have to go half again, and then half of that. Mathematically, you can keep dividing that distance into smaller and smaller fractions forever.
Oh, I see where this is going. There's always some tiny microscopic bit of distance left to go.
You never actually get home. According to pure mathematical logic, you're stuck in an infinite loop of halves. Motion is a paradox.
So, because the math says motion is impossible, but we clearly feel like we're moving, Bakırdöven sides with Parmenides. He's saying the movement is the illusion.
Yes, the universe is static. And to explain this, he brings in the philosopher Henri Bergson. Bergson argued that time isn't a flowing river.
What is it then?
It's more like a series of static moments.
Like frames in an old movie film.
That is the perfect analogy. Each frame on a film reel is a still picture. Nothing in it is moving. But when you run them past a projector fast enough,
Your brain stitches them together and creates the illusion of motion. So reality is just us sliding from one static now to the next.
that's the idea. It's the block universe theory. Past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, equally real.
Like a DVD that's already been burned. The beginning, middle, and end all exist on the disc at the same time. We're just the laser, reading it frame by frame.
You got it. That's the model he's working with.
But that raises a huge question. If it's all a static block, why does time feel so urgent? Why do I stress about deadlines? Why do we mourn the past?
And this is where Bakırdöven pulls in Carl Jung to explain the why. He says that linear time, the clock on your wall, is a construct. It's a creation of the ego.
The ego needs the clock.
It absolutely does. From an evolutionary perspective, the ego is all about order and survival. You need cause and effect. You need to know, I saw a lion over there yesterday, so I should avoid that spot today.
So linear time is a survival tool. It's an app running on our mental operating system.
Exactly. But Jung, and by extension Bakırdöven, argues that the unconscious mind, the deep psyche, it doesn't have that app installed. It exists outside of space-time.
So my conscious brain is worried about being on time for this recording.
But your unconscious mind is just sort of floating in an eternal now with access to the whole DVD at once.
And that right there is the perfect setup for the main event. Synchronicity, or immanuelkant in Turkish.
Yes, which Bakırdöven defines as a meaningful coincidence that just defies statistical probability. But here's the key part that I found so refreshing.
What's that?
Usually when we talk about these things, knowing who's calling, dreaming the future, we get put in a box.
Right, you're a mystic or you're psychic or it's just, ooh.
It's treated as supernatural. Bakırdöven's argument is, no, this is a natural phenomenon. It is a fundamental part of how reality is structured.
I really like that. He's trying to make it mechanical, not magical. He even shares a personal story about dreaming of architecture.
He does, and it's not some vague, I dreamt of a cool building story. He describes seeing these incredibly detailed, futuristic buildings in his dreams.
Like with blueprints in his head?
Almost. He sees specific structural elements, designs that just don't exist anywhere in the real world at that time.
And then what happens?
Years later, he sees those exact buildings being constructed.
Right.
He walks past them in real life.
Now, the skeptic in me wants to say, well, maybe he's just a fan of sci-fi. Or he's just pattern matching.
And Bakırdöven says this isn't because he's a prophet. He says anyone can do this. Because if you follow the logic, it makes sense.
Okay, connect the dots for me.
If the unconscious isn't bound by linear time, then seeing the future isn't magic. It's just your psyche taking a peek at a different part of the block universe.
It's skipping ahead a few frames on the DVD while the ego is asleep.
Or, here's another way to think about it. Your ego is walking through a maze. It can only see the walls right in front of it. That's linear reality.
Okay.
But your unconscious is hovering in a helicopter above the maze. It can see the entire layout. It knows the turn you're going to make in 5 minutes.
It's not magic, it's just a better vantage point.
Exactly. And that coincidence is just the moment the helicopter drops a little note down to the person lost in the maze.
I love that visualization.
Mm-hmm.
But, there are people listening right now thinking, cool story, but that is not how physics works.
And Bakırdöven is ready for that. He identifies that resistance. He calls it the religion of science.
He's not pulling any punches there.
No, but we need to be clear. He isn't anti-science. He thinks as a method, it's incredible. It gave us modern medicine, the internet.
Right. He's not saying throw it all out.
Not at all. He's saying it has become a dogma. Scientism. The idea that if you can't measure something with a physical instrument, it simply doesn't exist.
It's like using a metal detector to look for wood.
Perfect. And when it doesn't beep, you declare wood is not real. But the problem isn't the wood, it's your tool. You're using the wrong instrument for the job.
So to prove that science and this so-called mystic view aren't actually enemies, he brings in a real heavy hitter.
Wolfgang Pauli.
Now, this isn't some fringe thinker.
Yeah.
Pauli is a Nobel laureate, a founding father of quantum mechanics, a giant.
And what most people don't know, a close collaborator with Carl Jung.
Which is just wild to me. A quantum physicist and a dream psychologist writing a book together.
They did. The interpretation of nature and the psyche.
No.
And they were dead serious. Pauli was looking at the subatomic world and seeing things that defied classical physics.
Like quantum entanglement.
Exactly. What Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance.
The idea that two particles can be linked, right? So if you affect one here,
Its partner, even if it's on the other side of the galaxy, is affected instantly, faster than the speed of light. It breaks linear space and time.
and Pauli's big idea was.
He predicted that entanglement would eventually be proven, which it has been, and that it would be the physical mechanism that explains synchronicity.
So if atoms can communicate instantly across the universe without a wire, why can't human minds?
That's the question. And Bakırdöven points out the incredible irony here. Today, in the 2020s, quantum entanglement is accepted science. We use it.
What?
But the scientific community still hesitates to make that leap that Pauli did to connect it back to the psyche.
Because that would require what Bakırdöven calls lateral thinking.
Yes. He says every great scientific discovery began as an intuition, a hunch, a weird dream, an act of imagination. If we only look at the data we already have, we just get stuck in a feedback loop of what we already know.
Okay, so let's just pause and take stock of where we are.
Hmm.
We have a static universe, a psyche that can move non-linearly through it, and quantum physics that shows instant connection is possible.
Right. And this brings us to the biggest existential question of all.
Which is?
What does all this mean for death?
The deep end of the pool.
It is. Bakırdöven's argument is that if the psyche can access information outside of space and time, if it can see a building that hasn't been built, then it must have an existence independent of the biological body.
So this is a direct challenge to the standard view that the mind is just what the brain does.
He calls that the shallow view. The brain produces mind like a generator produces electricity. Generator breaks, light goes out. Game over.
In the deep view.
The mind utilizes the brain. The mind is the driver. The brain is the car.
When the car breaks down, the driver doesn't cease to exist.
The driver just gets out. The brain is our interface for the physical world, but the psyche, the driver, is native to that timeless, infinite block universe.
Okay, this brings us to the most practical and maybe the trippiest part of the whole analysis. He actually offers a method, an experiment to try and experience this. The table experiment.
And this is where he takes on the great philosopher Immanuel Kant.
Okay, quick refresher. What was Kant's big idea that Bakırdöven is pushing back on?
Kant distinguished between phenomena, things as we perceive them, and noumena, the thing in itself, its true essence.
And Kant said we can never know the noumena. Right. We're stuck behind the veil of our five senses.
We're locked out forever. But Bakırdöven says, hold on, I think we can pick the lock.
Okay, I want everyone listening to be able to try this. Let's walk through it step by step.
So he says you take a physical object, let's stick with a table, you look at it, that's your visual phenomenon. Then you introduce a second one, music.
Okay, so I'm staring at my table, and I'm listening to, say, some really emotional music.
Right. And the goal is to let them fuse together. You want to allow the emotional feeling of the music to merge with the visual texture of the table.
A sensory mashup.
He calls it a theta compound. He says if you close your eyes and you imagine the table as the feeling of the music, you create a new a priori reality, a synthesis.
And in that moment,
he argues you're bypassing your normal sensory limits. You're creating a bridge to the noumena, the infinite nature of the object.
it sounds a bit like induced synesthesia. Where people see sounds or taste colors.
It's very similar, but for him it's a philosophical tool. It's a way to prove to yourself that the mind can create a reality that's realer than just the sum of its physical parts.
And this all ties back to the final piece of the puzzle, which is the idea of habit. Because the world feels so rigid, right? The sun rises every day. If I drop my pen, it falls. Why?
That takes us to the philosopher davidhume and the habit of causality.
Causality is a habit. That's a bold claim.
Hume argued that we only believe the sun will rise tomorrow because of habit. We've seen it happen 1,000 times, so we expect it. But there's no absolute logical guarantee.
So Bakırdöven is saying the laws of physics are just habits of our perception of the universe.
Exactly. And if causality is just a mental habit and time is an ego construct, then that whole rigid world that says you can't see the future, that coincidences are meaningless, it all just starts to crumble.
The walls fall down?
The walls fall down and you realize you're just walking through a vast museum that's already been built, but your flashlight only lets you see one painting at a time.
Wow. That is a powerful image. So let's bring this all home. What's the takeaway? How does this change my Tuesday morning commute?
I think the big takeaway is about liberation. It's that we are products of our perception. If you stop treating strict materialism like a religion, the so-called impossible starts to feel natural.
It's about using the right tool for the job.
Precisely. Use science to build your car. Use medicine to heal your body. But don't use a ruler to measure your soul. For that, you need philosophy. You need intuition.
You don't try to weigh a dream.
And you don't dismiss a coincidence just because you can't weigh it. It suggests your gut feeling might just be the part of you that's standing a little further down the timeline, shouting instructions back to the you of today.
I love that. Well, this has been an incredible ride through the mind of Segay Bakırdöven.
It's always a pleasure to stretch the boundaries of what we think is real.
Before we sign off, I want to leave everyone with a final thought to mull over. We talked about how your unconscious mind might already be leading in the future.
So here's the question. What coincidence have you ignored recently? What random thought did you just brush off that might have actually been a message?
Message from the part of you that is already living in tomorrow. Maybe that friend calling wasn't so random after all. Thanks for diving deep with us.
See you next time.